You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI AM 640 is the election desk on Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Let's get right to it. You know at this point that Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, is leading in an electoral count sense. Depending on which network you're looking at, he's leading on all of them, but the totals may vary. But I want to start off tonight with someone who I respect personally, professionally, politically, who knows a little bit about this. He is Shermichael Singleton. He's Republican strategist and CNN contributor, Trump administration veteran and appointee, serving under HUD Secretary Dr. Ben Carson. Shermichael Singleton, how you doing, my brother?
Hey, Mo, I am doing well, man. Thanks for having me on your program. I am watching these numbers, which are truly impressive.
When you say impressive, obviously, I think all of us are surprised. And I say that respectfully because, not that anyone was following the polls, but given the history of former President Trump, given the obstacles in front of him, given the commentaries about him, I think a lot of people would have thought tonight would have gone at least a little bit differently.
I don't think so, Mo. I think a lot of men, specifically men of color and younger men, exerted their autonomy. I think the arguments that you should vote for the vice president, I think as Obama said, because black women have always had our backs, that failed. I think the idea of painting Trump as a racist or a bigot, I think those arguments failed. I think most men, and I'm saying this, and some may disagree with me, but I think most men, regardless of ethnicity, are principally concerned with different things. I think the Trump campaign's ads talking about the gender issues during football events, I think that was very effective. I think the arguments about the Democrats being more feminine in nature and Republicans being more protectors or representatives of traditional masculinity, that is for men who work with their hands, men who are comfortable just being a guy and embrace those things and care about those things, right? It's a part of their identity. I think people who agree with those things made a very clear decision. And the decision was that they believe the Democratic Party, at least the modern party, because this certainly isn't representative of all Democrats, because clearly there are a lot of men of color who clearly voted for the Democrats overwhelmingly. But Trump, if what we're saying is true from CNN, I work for CNN, I've been watching them for the past couple of hours now. If it's true that Trump is increasing margins in places like Wisconsin by 25%, I mean, these numbers are unheard of. The last Republican to do this well with people of color was Richard Nixon. So you're talking several decades ago. And so when I say it's impressive, that's what I mean. I think now the question becomes, if Trump does win, and it appears that he's going to win, though, the Republican Party and position on a whole host of things that specifically impact men of color from an economic perspective will have to be addressed. We have seen trends change in some pretty drastic numbers for Latino men and black men in terms of academic attainment. We're not going to college, Mo, at the same rates as the women in our community. We're not graduating with college degrees at the same rates of women in our community. We're seeing an increase in suicidal dereliction from men of color. There's a lot going on with men that no one is appearing to put a spotlight on. And so when you have J.D. Vance and some of his commentary talk about men in some very unique ways and the importance of men and the role of men in their families and their communities, this stuff has a lot of resonance to a lot of people. I'm writing a book on this topic. I've been talking about this for months on CNN, and a lot of people have been skeptical of me. And we're seeing the data. Even if Trump were to lose this thing, the fact that he's increased his numbers so significantly with these groups cannot be ignored.
Let me jump in there because there is what is happening on the presidential level, and I'm also seeing what is happening on the senatorial level where where I see the Republicans now basically have 50 seats locked up. It looks almost a fait accompli that they will have control of the Senate. It's just a matter of by how many seats. How do you read that map?
I'm not surprised by it. I've always believed that there was a pretty good chance that Democrats may take the House. I thought the Senate was going to flip, and I thought it was going to flip essentially in reverse to what it currently is. Can Republicans win an extra seat or two? I think it's possible. But if Trump wins, you have a Republican vice president that will be the tiebreaker, essentially fulfilling the same role that Vice President Harris currently has with President Biden. So that's not unrealistic. No surprise there. You would think if Trump wins, Republicans might be able to keep the House, albeit a very slim margin, if he were to run up the numbers that much. I mean, I was looking at the New York Times. Even the New York Times have the possibility that Trump could win the popular vote. I mean, Mo, can you imagine that? A Republican, even the possibility, let's say he doesn't win it, but even the possibility is unheard of. I can't think of the last Republican to win the popular vote.
I can tell
Ronald
you.
Reagan? Or maybe?
No. It was 2004, George W. Bush, 2004.
Popular vote. Go. A Bush. So this is just impressive, man.
Okay,
this is impressive. And Mo, I'll just say quickly, it's impressive because of your opening question to me about Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a lot of flaws. I'm not going to pretend that he doesn't. And he says a lot of outrageous things that turns a lot of people off. And yet, despite all of those things, this guy appears to have increased his margins from 2016, from 2020, across the board. And what that tells you is that what propelled him in 2016, what barely lost him the presidency in 2020, people forget he lost by less than 80,000 votes. I mean, it was very slim in terms of the Electoral College. That grievance that people are still feeling is still there. I think the issue this time around, though, is that grievance isn't just with only a certain class of white Americans. I think this grievance is starting to percolate among communities of color, whether it's an economic grievance, whether this idea that a class of sort of technocratic elites have sort of left behind everybody else. And Trump has been good at pointing a spotlight, critiquing these issues with people, whether it's immigration, and people say, oh, Trump is racist because of his views on immigration. Well, one only needed to read local news reports, Mo, in Chicago or New York, where black residents there were angry at the resources being reshuffled to immigrants away from them. And I remember one thing with Mayor Adams out in New York a couple months ago at Town Hall, and it shocked me by the complaints by some of the people there and how they felt about new individuals coming into their city and how new resources were being redirected. And people were saying, well, we've been fighting for these things for years, and you guys always say there's not enough resources, and all of a sudden you're opening up new buildings for new people. I don't say this as a slight against anyone attempting to come into the country fleeing any type of persecution. The point I'm attempting to make here, though, Mo, is that those things are very real for people, and I think there's just been a disconnect from a lot of folks in the media and a lot of folks in the Democratic Party, and it appears you're seeing it in real time.
Sure, Michael, I got 30 seconds with you, and I'm going to make you answer an impossible question. I know it's a both and, but what do you attribute it to be more of? Do you see tonight as more of an embrace of Donald Trump and specifically what he was offering, or more of a repudiation of Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party and what they were offering?
I think a repudiation of the Democratic Party, and I think an embrace of the critique that Donald Trump has brought to the forefront in terms of economics, in terms of immigration, in terms of foreign policy. People are struggling out there. They want a secure border, and they do not want to send their sons and daughters to another long war that's going to cost over $1 trillion. And Trump is saying, I'm going to provide a solution to all of that. Sure, he may be light on the specifics, and I'm a specifics kind of guy, but when you provide a spotlight and a critique of something that people are saying, this is a problem and no one else seems to listen, they're going to open their ears to the guy who's pointing out that issue. And I think that's why Trump is potentially doing so well and may actually win this thing.
He is Shermichael Singleton, Republican strategist, CNN contributor, Trump administration veteran and appointee serving under HUD Secretary Dr. Ben Carson, and a friend of mine. Shermichael, it's been too long. Make sure we do it again sometime soon.
Let's do it soon, Mo. Thank you, my friend, and God bless you.
Absolutely. Have a great night. It's the Election Desk at KFI AM 640. We'll have more. We'll check in with Spectrum's Joe Kwan about some of the issues and some of the measures locally as the polls are now closed here in California.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
I'm Mo Kelly coming to you from the KFI AM 640 and iHeartRadio election desk. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And joining me right now is Spectrum News SoCal reporter, anchor, and KFI anchor Joe Kwan with the latest on Measure A and Measure G. Joe Kwan, it's good to talk to you this evening. How are you, my friend?
Good. How are you? Yeah, Measure A, G, big LA County issues. Measure A has to do with money for homeless services and affordable housing. This is asking whether voters wanted to increase the sales tax a half cent to pay for those things. Now, keep in mind, Mo, back in 2017, 69% of voters passed Measure H, which raised the sales tax a quarter cent. But that expires in 2027. This Measure A, the half-cent sales tax, has no sunset date. There are some exemptions for things like groceries. The other interesting thing about this is we're seeing just about, I think, single-digit percentages of the reporting districts coming back now. Mm-hmm. This is only going to require a simple majority for this to pass because this was a citizen-led initiative. So if this was proposed by somebody on, let's say, City Council or Board of Supervisors, it would require 2/3 vote. The yes side says that this will raise $1 billion annually estimated. And they say that letting Measure H expire without some sort of revenue stream, again, that one expires in 2027, that the homeless numbers could go up. But the opponents of this say that taxpayers haven't really received their money's worth with Measure H. And in fact, some of the opponents say that homelessness has gone up about 37%. And also just looking at the economy in general with inflation and the cost of things going up, affordability, that doubling the tax rate just isn't something that people can afford at this time.
I know
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know a reasonable person will probably say, hey, we have to do more for the homeless. We need to do something about the homeless. We should do whatever we need to do. But I've lived in California to know that we've applied more and more taxes. We've thrown more and more money at this issue, and it has not seemingly made a dent in the problem. In your reporting, in your coverage, did you get any sense that there was measurable support for Measure A and adding to our sales tax?
Just like anything, it depends on who you ask, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But we have seen time and time again, just historically, with these types of sales tax, like in 2017, Measure H, a quarter-cent sales tax, passed with 69% support. So based on history, you might expect potentially this to pass, but in this type of unprecedented election, you just never know how it's going to go. But based on history, it wouldn't surprise me if it did pass.
Let's get into Measure G. And if for people who don't know, Measure G would expand the size of the LA County Board of Supervisors and making the county CEO an elected position. Me, as a person who lives in LA County, I know that how a county supervisor is responsible for 2 million people each on average, and it can be unwieldy. I know the argument for it, but there has been some pushback as far as making the county CEO an elected position and making all the supervisors subservient or subordinate to that elected position. Do we know where this might be trending to the best of your knowledge?
Yeah, again, depends on who you ask, just anecdotally talking to people who live in the county. They like parts of this. For example, like you said, it would expand the Board of Supervisors from 5 seats to 9 seats. So they like that portion of it. But as you mentioned, the CEO would become an elected position. And that's actually something the opponents of this have concern with, saying that the CEO position, who kind of runs the day-to-day kind of stuff, should be nonpartisan and shouldn't have to maybe cater, or whatever word you'd like to use, toward voters. And, this does create some sort of ethics commission. While some people support the idea of having an ethics commission, there's the other side of it too, that, is there going to be added cost to this? What about the transparency with the CEO? Yeah, and, a little history about the Board of Supervisors. The system was created back in 1912 when the population of LA County was closer to 500,000, and now it's up to about 10 million. So it's a situation where we have a larger population, but if it comes along with these other things, the CEO really is a thing that has, even people who say, yeah, I'd like to have more Board of Supervisors have told me that CEO being elected is a concern for them.
Joe Kwan, Spectrum News, SoCal reporter, anchor, and KFI anchor. Joe Kwan, I appreciate you coming on under short notice. It's a long day and night for everyone, but I appreciate you staying up late with us.
Anytime, Mo. Nice to speak with you.
I'm Mo Kelly coming to you from the KFI AM 640 and iHeartRadio election desks. We'll have some updates, some actual numbers when we come back. As of this moment, Measure A and Measure G, which we were talking about, no voting returns have come in. No vote tabulations or totals. So when we come back, hopefully we'll have that for you. But we do have an update in the race for Senate between Adam Schiff and Steve Garvey. We'll tell you about that when we come back.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
This is the KFI Election Desk. I'm Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app, and I'm going to go with Fox News. They have been the most aggressive as far as calling states to give you some sense of where we are in the presidential race and what's happening on the Senate side and the House. Right now, Fox News has Donald Trump up over Harris, 216 to 193. California has come in. If you're wondering why it got closer, California, Oregon, and the state of Washington were all called for Vice President Harris. For Donald Trump, Idaho, and I think that's the last state that's been called for Donald Trump. There are some reports which are calling North Carolina for Donald Trump, so that number may change. And I understand if you're watching Fox News, you're getting one number. If you're watching CNN, you're getting a different number. If you're watching MSNBC, you're getting a different number. Or if you're watching online at various news sites, you may get a different number. That's because each election desk for each media outlet is going to be very different. Some are going to be more conservative in their projections and their calls than others. I'm going by Fox News so I can give you a consistent number for the rest of my time with you. But right now it is Donald Trump 216, Kamala Harris 193, and that's not including North Carolina, which is just being called by various sources and outlets for Donald Trump, which would be another 16 electoral college votes for Donald Trump. If you're a Harris supporter, it's really getting nervous time, it's getting desperation time, if only because the blue wall, which any Democrat would need to become president, states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Presently, Kamala Harris trails in all three of those states. Obviously, if she loses one, definitely two of them, she would have no pathway to becoming president. So that's what we're watching right now. It all depends if those states are projected tonight, whether the race would be called tonight. That's what most people are waiting and watching for. But it's still trending in the direction of Donald Trump. More locally, they have called the Senate election here in California, and Adam Schiff has beaten Steve Garvey and will be our next U.S. senator, our next junior senator. And honestly, that should not have been any surprise to anyone who was paying attention. We know that Steve Garvey made a lot of appearances here on KFI, but that was basically the extent of his campaign. From what I know, from the people that I talked to up and down the state, he did not have any real ground presence. He was not going to the different counties. He was not doing the retail politics, which is just necessary in a statewide race. And I said from the very beginning, and this is not to spike the football, but I think it does bear mentioning for all the criticisms of why California is called this so-called one-party state. You have to have a presence, you have to have credible candidates, and you have to develop relationships with different coalitions and constituencies if you want to actually win a statewide race. And although Steve Garvey may have been very popular within certain quadrants of the state, definitely Orange County, he was not popular elsewhere. He was not well known elsewhere, and he was not doing the things to build those inroads. And it wasn't realistic at any point that he would become senator. So if you were disappointed that Steve Garvey lost, just know that the Republicans have work to do here in California if they're going to win statewide races or even certain congressional races. We'll find out how that pans out and plays out the rest of the evening. But if you're just tuning in, they have called the race for the U.S. California Senator, and Adam Schiff will be the next senator triumphing over Steve Garvey. And we're still waiting on some of these results to come in for some of the local races and the different measures. And Tawala, you gave me some information about Proposition 33, how it's losing, the last I looked, almost 2-1.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And if you don't know, we have talked on my show later with Mo Kelly about the idea of rent control and how we, when I say we, regular people, you and me, we complain about how high the rent is or how high the rent has been, how high the cost of living is here in California. And each and every time there is an opportunity to vote in some semblance of rent control, almost universally, it's always voted down. We as Californians can't have it both ways. Now, you can say that Prop 33 wasn't perfect. It was an issue with this or issue with that. All I'm saying is you can't complain about the rent being high and also say that, well, we're not going to do anything about it, that which is in our control. I'm not renting, so this is not like I personally have a dog in this fight. I'm just saying historically, California has always voted down rent control. And also historically, Californians have complained about the cost of rent every single year. So there's a disconnect because we know that there are more people renting than there are landlords. So I don't know what the disconnect is, but that is something that we'll be watching the rest of the evening. Proposition 36 is going to win overwhelmingly. Some 17% of the vote is in, and it is winning with 73% of the vote of the 17%, which is in. 2.1 million to 800,000. That's Proposition 36. And let me just give you some specific numbers. We're talking about Proposition 33. 17% of the vote is in, and the no's have it 64 to 35% of that 17% ins so far. No real surprise. Now, they're listing 0% of the vote in being reported in that highly watched race between George Gascon and Nathan Hochman for LA County District Attorney. But I don't think it should be any surprise that Nathan Hochman, from every quadrant, every person that I've spoken to, every elected official, every person on the street have said that it's going to be Nathan Hochman's race to lose, and he should win probably 3-1, if I'm not mistaken. And if Nathan Hochman should prevail, we will have his victory address come to you live. We'll probably talk to Steve Gregory, who was on location at Nathan Hochman's headquarters, and we'll be able to hopefully get some sound from him as to what the mood is like. And here is my question, if I had a chance to speak to Nathan Hochman. How soon might we, as people who live in Los Angeles County, how soon might we feel a difference, see a difference? What is going to be the difference? It's one thing to say, I'm going to enforce the law, I'm going to be tougher on crime, but what does that mean for people like you and me who are dealing with the street takeovers every day, who are dealing with the looting of the 7-Eleven? What does that mean for the person who's running up and punching elderly people? Yes, you may prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, but how are we going to start feeling the change in this elected official position? That would be something that I would ask Nathan Hochman. And we're going to continue to watch that race and so much more when we come back. I'll be joined by KFI's own Corbin Carson, who's going to give us an update on the congressional races in Orange County and more. It's the KFI Election Desk. I'm Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640 live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
It's the KFI Election Desk. I'm Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Let's check in with Corbin Carson, who has an update on the congressional races in Orange County. Corbin, how are you, sir?
Well, first of all, Mo, how are you? I just left the Republican Watch Party here at Muldoon's in Newport Beach. I spoke with the chair of the Orange County Republican Party, who said that there's some races they're winning and there's some there's not, but it's too close. Here's his latest.
Most of the Republican voters, if you look at our turnout, right now, countywide, we have 43,000 more Republicans have voted than Democrats. That's turn-ins. That's not the votes, right? So the votes, as they're getting counted, we're going to see those in the returns later this evening.
And then about the Scott Ball race.
Yeah. So in Baugh, we have 10,000 as of 3 o'clock today. We have 10,000 more Republicans have voted than Democrats. And so as the returns come in later and later tonight, you're going to see us having great results in that race.
So they're real confident out here, Mo. And this matters because Republicans and Democrats both have about 2 seats safe in Congress, and the winner of these 2 congressional races in Orange County could decide which party controls the House of Representatives. The first is the 45th District, which includes Cerritos, Bueno Park, and those. That seat is currently held by Congresswoman Michelle Steele. She's in a tight race with Democrat Derek Tran. First, let's talk to Derek Tran, who talked about how important this local race is to Democrats nationally.
This is the closest race in the country. Every single poll has us neck and neck. Republicans control the House by just 4 seats. So it's not just about electing me, but it's the difference between a Republican Congress and a Democratic Congress, a Speaker Johnson or a Speaker Jeffries, another January 6th, or protecting our democracy.
And then I asked Congresswoman Michelle Steele, she is the incumbent. I asked her the same question. How important is this for Republicans?
We have a very unique perspective nationally because we understand that what it's like living in a state with high taxes, personal income tax 13.3%, and spend policies and how that's failing California families. And our families are really suffering with the high inflation rate and gas prices. And I think that's the reason that we are working really hard to get reelected.
The other close race is the 47th District. That's Newport Beach, Lake Forest, Irvine. The seat's been vacated by Democratic Congresswoman Katie Porter. It's now in a tight heat between former Republican Assemblyman Scott Baugh and Democratic State Senator Dave Min. I talked to Baugh also. I got a one-on-one with him to talk about how important this district is for Republicans.
Gerrymandering throughout the entire country has left only about 20 seats that are up for grabs. The rest of the seats are relatively safe, either Republican or Democrat. And this is one of 4 open seats in the entire country where there's no incumbent running for re-election in a purple district that is winnable. As you know, I ran last time and got really close, notwithstanding being outspent 9-1. This time I'm still being outspent, but it's closer to 3-1, so it's more of a fair fight. But it's an important seat for our party because we want to make sure that we maintain control of Congress and see if we can grow it a little bit.
And then he's going against State Senator Dave Min. He says this is a toss-up that Democrats must win.
This race is seen as one of the most important House races in the country. Katie Porter, who currently represents this area but is leaving the seat behind, won her race by only 3 points in 2022, despite significantly outspending her opponent, Scott Baugh. Scott Baugh is running again, of course, and he is my opponent in this race. And because of that close margin in 2022, both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, have made this the top battleground race in the country, in the state. One of the top battleground races in the country.
So there you have it, Mo. These are so tight. We should be getting some more election results are just starting to trickle in as to who is going to win. But I got to tell you, as you heard Whitaker say, in California, there's so many ballots that are still being tabulated. Right. There's a good chance we might not know who won in either of these races tonight.
We may not know, but here are the latest returns that I am getting in Congressional District 45. Tran, the Democrat, is leading steal the incumbent Republican 51.6 to 48.4%, with 46% of the vote in. And in Congressional District 47, Min, the Democrat, is leading Bob, the Republican, 55.2 to 44.8, with 52% of the vote in. So at this point, given that we know, yes, there's going to be more of a Republican vote which is coming in, but both the Democrats are leading in those respective congressional races with about 47 to 52% of the vote in, respectively.
Yeah, so a lot still to decide here, but it remains to be seen as these numbers trickle in over the night, Mo.
Now, where you are right now, describe for me the mood. Is it jovial? Is it concern? What is it you're seeing and hearing?
Oh, absolutely jovial. There are, as you would imagine, at a Republican watch party, there are multiple American flags and Make America Great Again. Obviously, they're hearing the feeling in here is that many of the voters that I've talked to is that Trump is going to take this election. That's what they think. Mm-hmm. And then again, they're also very excited as they hear they just won. I think it was another a Senate seat. That was what Mr. Whitaker was talking to me, the chair of the Orange County Republican Party. So a lot of positive energy in here. They did, like I said earlier, admit that they are trailing in some races, the two that you mentioned, the two key that could mean the difference for the House of Representatives. But again, there are so many votes that still need to be counted.
Corbin Carson, thank you so much. I know you have a long evening still ahead of you, so try to get some rest. Try to get some food in while you can.
Thank you, sir.
And before we go to this break, just want to give you an update in the presidential race. And I'm following Fox News. Trump is up 232 to Harris's 212. The state of North Carolina has been called for Donald Trump. Arguably, that's the first battleground state which has been decided and called for one of the candidates. Vice President Harris was also projected to win Virginia. So that keeps her in the running, but it still comes down to what, as they say, is the blue wall, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. In Wisconsin, there's 75% of the vote, which has been reported, and Donald Trump leads by about 4 percentage points. In Michigan, 43% of the vote has been reported, and Donald Trump leads 51 to 46. I'm just rounding off for right now. And in Pennsylvania, 83% of the vote is in for Pennsylvania, and Donald Trump is winning 51.3% to 47.7%. I'm just going out on a limb here. If Pennsylvania is called tonight for Donald Trump, if it's called tonight, then we probably will have a projected winner of the election tonight, because without Pennsylvania, I don't see, I may be wrong, but mathematically there may not be a path to victory for Kamala Harris if she loses Pennsylvania. We will continue to follow. It's the KFI Election Desk. I'm Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
One, two, three.
This election brought to you by Counting. Counting is not as confusing as it sounds.
KFI
and KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio